Long time no see, pal.
Hi, once again, YouTube. It's Rainy. I've been gone for a while, but now I'm back. First time I did a review and a speed draw. It was for Child's Play. And now this time I'm going to go ahead and do Child's Play 2 review and speed draw in the background. So before I start, I just like to mention the paper I'm using this time around. I went with Arches hot pressed watercolor paper. I like to use that a lot because I can do a lot of things with it, and I'm using gouache this time so I can layer stuff on top of it, and it just makes it much easier to do what I want to do with it instead of being super thin. So yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and do the Child's Play 2 review, and I hope you like it and the drawing. So a few facts first. Child's Play 2 was released on November 9th, 1990. So it was the same month as the first movie. It was just a year later, and it grossed $35.8 million. And this is the first movie in the original series of Child's Play movies that had a novelization with it, which I'll get back to later. And that was released around the same time. I looked on Amazon for the novelization, and I mean, of course it's long out of print, so it goes for about like $56 on Amazon the last time I looked. I think I saw it somewhere for like $200, so yeah, I'm not gonna be picking that up anytime soon, but there is a PDF online if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so basically right after the first movie wraps up, well, not right after, but basically it picks up where Andy is a few years older and he's been placed in foster care because his mom from the first movie, Karen, played by Catherine Hicks, she couldn't make it into this movie, so they wrote her out and they had her committed to a mental institution because she refused to lie about what happened with Chucky, so they thought she was crazy. Andy is then taken in by Phil and Joanne Simpson, who are a couple who regularly take in foster children. And there at their house, he meets Kyle, who's a teenager the couple are fostering. And, you know, Andy, throughout the course of the movie, tries to kind of go on with his life. He tries to move on from the whole Chucky thing, even though he can't. And him and Kyle, you know, through the process, of course, they form a bond. But of course, Chucky has come back and he's tracking him down. He tracks him down to their house because he needs to finish what he started in the first movie. So it's a really good movie. Maybe that's a spoiler right off the bat, but of course, I really enjoy this movie. I did mention last time in the Child's Play 1 review that it's kind of a toss-up. I don't know which one I like better, this movie or the first Child's Play. I think this one actually has an edge over the first one, but they're both pretty close. I think this sequel is really interesting. The things I do like about it, basically, you know, the opening is really cool. You have like the whole sequence of the company that makes the good guy dolls actually got a hold of Chucky's burnt corpse from the first movie, and now they're rebuilding it and they're refurbishing it and they're cleaning it up, and now this restarts this time bomb with Chucky because he has a fresh body now, so you know he has to hurry up and get to Andy so he can transfer his soul into Andy's body before, you know, he's stuck in that body forever again. It actually really adds a lot of the tension to the plot. You know, I can personally feel the tension in Chucky's kind of race against time, even though you don't necessarily sympathize with the character for the most part. It adds a lot of tension because this movie focuses more on him, throughout the whole film, really trying to hurry up and get to Andy before it's too late. So I really liked that they put more of an emphasis on that in this sequel. One of the most interesting parts of this movie for me, why I think it's, kind of has an edge over the first movie, is Phil and Joanne, their characters. They're kind of a strange couple. They live in this big, old looking house, and it's a really great setting for a movie like this because it's so creepy. It's almost like a haunted house, but it's not. It's got this eeriness of, a large house filled with all these old things, these old decorations. It looks like it smells like mothballs. It feels like it would be more appropriate for a grandmother. There's old portraits and knickknacks and stuff like that just everywhere in the house. And it really, I think, kind of gives a glimpse into Joanne's character in particular. Joanne seems, she seems like a pretty unhappy person. She seems like she's stuck in the past. There's this old porcelain figurine in the movie that Chucky, later destroys. And it's an heirloom from Joanne's family. And the whole house feels like a big heirloom that she kind of seems out of place in. It's really hard to describe, but I just think it's a very interesting aspect to her character, because she sews. It seems like, that's another skill that's associated with something that's like old and passed down. I imagine her mom taught her how to sew, or her grandmother or something like that. So she's surrounded by all these heirlooms, but she's got no one to pass them on to. There's this scene where she's talking to Andy about the figurine, and she mentions that it's been passed down to her from her mother and her grandmother, and then Andy asks, who are you gonna give it to? And there's like this awkward silence, and the movie pretty much implies that she can't have kids. She's probably doesn't have the ability to have children. There's deleted scenes for this movie that kind of expands on that.
That woman from the adoption agency called today.
And?
We were turned down again.
What?
Just aren't that many kids to go round. We're on the wait list.
So she seems desperate to fill this void that she has of not being able to have children with like taking in foster kids. She seems like just really determined to make a family of her own, and without that added context from that deleted scene and the other deleted scenes, it almost comes across like she's someone who just cycles through foster kids mainly just from desperation rather than just from the fact that the foster care system keeps screwing them over and they aren't even able to just adopt a kid and raise them as their own. For the character of Phil, he's even more interesting because in the theatrical cut of the movie, he's this total asshole. Like he's a real hard ass. He doesn't treat Andy very well. But with the deleted scenes, there's like a softness to him. It's almost like, he's got a really hardened exterior because he kind of has to. But he's frustrated with Joanne's situation, and he's frustrated with the fact that they keep being put on the wait list and everything because he wants his wife to be happy, and he wants to stop seeing her go through this process over and over again. And you get the feeling that his roughness kind of comes from that. And I get the impression that these scenes are probably cut because it had a lot to do with making both characters less sympathetic, like especially Phil, you know, making them less sympathetic so that the audience would like be less invested in them when they do eventually get like bumped off by Chucky, because, you know, it's inevitable, like they do get killed. That's just my interpretation though, but I think that a lot of like studios and everything, especially back then, they didn't want to invest too much time in characterization for people who like were just like horror fodder that were just gonna die and get killed off. And so, I mean, of course, you know, having to do with pacing and timing and everything like that too, I'm sure. But I feel like that's probably why they cut those scenes out completely. And so I'm not actually sure if I would have preferred the deleted scenes in the movie or not. Because on the one hand, I think, I mean, they had very interesting and fleshed out characters, especially for like a horror movie. And I think this movie could have really benefited from them being more fleshed out and having, you know, that kind of little, I don't know if you want to call it little B storyline, like having that stay in. But on the other hand, I would rather not feel that much sympathy for these characters, even though I still feel sorry for Joanne a little bit. I almost called her Diane, but I still feel sorry for Joanne a little bit, at least until, you know, she turns against Andy at the end. But I mean, I don't know if it would have benefited if they kept those scenes in, because I guess I'm part of that, you know, that audience that would rather not get invested in these characters if they're gonna die. Maybe that's who the producers or whatever, like, they think about people like me. But either way, cutting out these particular scenes I don't think hurt the movie. I think it would have helped it if they left them in, but I don't think it would have hurt the movie. It's just something interesting to think about. Jenny Agutter, who played Joanne, she was really unhappy with her characterization being cut out as Joanne and what it was reduced to. She said, quote, "It was much less than the script I read." I think it was a bad experience for her, and she was really frustrated with putting all that work into her role and then having half of the material cut. I mean, not even just half, like pretty much all of it cut out. And she said that making Child's Play 2 was not one of her finest moments. That's kind of a shame that she thinks of it that way. I kind of hate when actors like look back on roles they did and are like not happy about it. She said that she had to scream and run up and down a corridor, which I'm not sure where a corridor came from. That's just something really interesting to me, because I feel like maybe that came from another deleted scene that just was never included in like special features or anything, but whatever. It's a shame that she didn't have a good time making it, because I still think her character is still very interesting and she did a very good job. You know, her performance was really good. Garrett Graham, also the actor who played Phil, I seem to remember reading somewhere that he wasn't very happy with the cuts either. I should have saved it or something, but that's what I seem to remember hearing somewhere, that he did not like that, you know, most all of his scenes that were actually fleshing out his character were cut. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The TV cuts, you know, put all of that back in, which is kind of weird that they do that, but maybe one day we'll see an ultimate cut or something come out on Blu-ray or something. I mean, that's a pipe dream. I don't ever think that's going to happen, but maybe it will. I did say in the last video that I wish Catherine Hicks would have been in this movie. Just because, you know, I mean, although I like that sequels kind of tend to get like a little bit, well, some of them, they tend to get like edgier, like edgier and more like hard. Like this one is like, I feel like is definitely a lot edgier, and I like that part of it, but I feel like it's just missing a little bit of that softness that Andy's mom had. And, you know, I would have loved to see her character in this new setting and like the factory and everything like that, and how that would have like played out. But with that being said, again, it's not something that I think, you know, takes away from this movie and that it brings it down. It's just kind of like a personal thing for me. Kyle is, I think, makes a fine replacement for that figure in Andy's life that's like a family figure. You know, she becomes like a family figure, and I think Kyle is one of the best characters in the franchise. She's very strong. She's a good like rock for Andy, and I like that Andy has all this weird stuff happen to him, like, you know, getting tied up and everything like that, and she sort of just takes it in stride, and she's like, well, he's a weird kid, but I like him anyway, I'll be his friend. It's nice that Andy and Kyle end up finding their own family in each other, and, you know, at the end they walk out and to go home, wherever that is, but they're going together, and, you know, they're family now, and I really like how that became, you know, the story for Andy when they couldn't have, you know, his mom come back, because I think it's really cool that they, you know, were able to find an actress that had such good chemistry with him, and, you know, it worked out for the best in the end, I will say. Chucky in this movie is, of course, Chucky, but, you know, he's pure Chucky now. Like, this is really when he comes into his own. Like, Brad Dourif really nails down the character this time, like, fleshes it out and just goes all in. He's great, of course. Like, there's not really that much to say. This is when he shines and when he really cements the character. Another thing I like about this movie is that it keeps up with the theme of Chucky still being essentially like a man inside a doll's body trying to get out. Because I feel like in later installments, they more just play up the whole doll thing, and the character kind of loses his identity a little bit. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but that's one of the things that makes his character so fascinating to me is, you know, this soul that's trapped in this plastic doll. And I mentioned in the last review how I actually wish that they would have expanded more on the use of voodoo as it relates to Chucky transporting his human soul, you know, into a vessel, and just like voodoo traditions. You know, they could have made that work somehow, but this movie does come with a novelization that further expands on that, and I just kind of want to talk about it for like a second. So the novelization has this section where it describes Damballa when Charles Lee Ray like summons him for the first time. It's got this really cool descriptive like visualization of what Damballa looks like. Charles Lee Ray remembered opening his mouth, gulping at the air. He would have to be crazy to use his nostrils. A body, gray like the clouds, wet, covered with some slick, oily liquid. It lives in some pool, a pool of the damned at the end of the universe. Damballa, the soul catcher, the eater of spirits. A head had emerged, a soup bowl of eyes with an opening, a mouth filled with gray tongues, licking at the fetid air of the basement, savoring it. At that point, Charles Lee Ray remembered falling down onto the red pool. He hadn't even noticed what he'd fallen into. That is just so cool. That's so gnarly. And I don't know, it makes me not like mad, or I don't know, not even disappointed per se, but I just wish that, again, one of my main criticisms, and you know, this is probably just like a personal thing, but like with all of the Child's Play movies, is that they didn't do what this novelization did and basically, you know, take the idea of Damballa and voodoo and run with it. And I'm not saying in the sense of like it overshadows Chucky just running around stabbing people to death. I'm just saying that, like, you know, Don Mancini didn't ever like the voodoo thing. I think I mentioned that in the last review, and you can like look it up and stuff. It's like out there public knowledge that he never liked it.
And he was like, that was one of the things he fought with the director about and stuff like that. And then he started making fun of it in like later movies. And I feel like that was such like a missed opportunity. Like, instead of making fun of it, like, take it and run with it and really get descriptive and creepy with it. Like, in that paragraph, like, it could really benefit your story if you let it, you know. But I don't know, I guess he did do his own thing with it in a way. Just I don't really like that he made it more of a joke than anything, but that's just me. But expanding more on what else I liked about this movie, because there's not much I didn't like about this movie. Well, there's not really anything I didn't like. Those are just kind of like nitpick, minor criticism things, I guess. Concerning Chucky coming into his own as a character, the animatronic on the puppet, I mean, it's of course advanced. Like, this is a year after the first movie, and technology already got much better with mastering like his look and his movement. His movement is like a lot smoother, and you can really see like the personality in there. I particularly love the part where Chucky is trying to get into Andy's room and he can't right then, and he says shit under his breath, and the way that he jerks his head as he says shit as he says it, it's so human like, it's so expressive. And the part where he like almost forgets his name is funny, as well as like just the close up on his lips being like bright pink because it's a fresh coat of paint on like his refurbished body. It's just a nice touch, a nice attention to detail, and that all goes in again to how well they expanded and improved on the character in this sequel. The music in this movie was composed by Graham Revell, and I think this was one of his earliest scores. It's really like majestic and epic. It makes you feel like the stakes are really high. And I really like how it almost seems more epic than the movie. It seems like almost from like a different movie to me. It's very majestic and like sweeping. And it does fit with like the final sequence. The final sequence, it might be a little bit too drawn out, like, to be honest. But even still, I would argue it's the best part of the movie. The part in the factory where it just goes like full blast and it just never lets up from there. This sequence, I think, really started like the whole trend of Chucky just getting his ass handed to him over and over again, and then he's still going. It's just like, it just goes on and on and on and on, but it's so much fun to watch, and it's just like crazy. It's just like balls to the wall. And yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's really like the centerpiece for the whole movie. So yeah, all in all, Child's Play 2, maybe just a notch above Child's Play 1 for me. I would say the original trilogy peaked with this movie. Even though I still really enjoyed part 3, I also think part 3 is a lot of fun. And I will get to that hopefully this year. But I hope you enjoyed this rambling review, and I hope you enjoyed the drawing. Took me a while to get this out, but I hope that it's at least entertaining. And I will let the rest play us out, and I hope you have a good 2023. See you in the next one, hopefully very soon. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye, y'all.